in November of '69, I actually went along to the Purcell Rooms to see David Bowie, who was doing a concert there with Tony Visconti and his trio. And like everybody else, I was just totally spellbound. But I hadn't really had an outlet where I could use David. Now having the outlet of the In Concert programme and seeing David perform as well as he did at the Purcell Rooms, I had no doubt in my mind that he would be able to do it. And interestingly, when I booked him, and the list of the artists I was booking for that quarter actually went up in front of my line manager, he was very suspicious about it, called me in, and he knew one or two of the names on that. He had heard of David Bowie. He said, but, you know, can this guy do an hour by himself? And I said, yes, absolutely. He said, well, it's on your head. I said, I know that.
Bowie was looking, I think, at the time for a band, and he was using this band as his backing band. And they did a few gigs, and then poor John got kicked out again. And Mick rang me up, Bowie rang up and said, well, Mick says you're really good, I want you to come and join me. So I said, yeah, okay. I guess he was a folk guitarist when we first joined him. He did gigs on his own. In fact, I did a few gigs with him just playing congas. We'd go and do like 2 gigs a night in London, a pub here and a roundhouse. We'd just go, oh, let's go and do a gig. And he'd play his songs and I'd just sit on a mat and play bongos, you know. So it was a completely different scene, and we'd been sort of anti-folk, to be honest. We weren't into folk music. I mean, it just wasn't rock and roll, you know. But then we heard the songs, and I guess our job was turning them into rock and roll things. We understood the rock and roll viewpoint and the playing. So a lot of times it was taking a folk guitarist's song that was an incredible song and putting it into a rock and roll format. So Mick would change some of the chords and do this, and just to make it rock it up. But you couldn't ignore the songs and the lyrics. It was just so different and so emotional, and it was him. I mean, nobody writes like him. Man Who Sold the World album with Mick and Tony Visconti on bass. That was the start, really. That was the start of, I guess, really getting used to Bowie's writing, and some of the strange chord sequences and time signatures. Just getting familiar with how he wrote. It wasn't what you normally expected. We'd come up through sort of blues, a little bit of Tamla Motown, into early Zeppelin and very much into Hendrix and Cream. So our basics in music was in that area. So on that first album, we got it out of our system. You know, it was like, oh, I'd love to play a drum fill like that, and it seems to fit this song. So it went in there. So for us, that was the first time in a studio, Mick and I.
They came back to Hull after making that album and doing a few gigs with Bowie, and they decided they didn't really want to play anymore with David. And they wanted to form a band, and they needed a bass player. So I agreed to sort of sit in till they found somebody. And I never left. And I finished up joining in the end. You know, it was such good fun, you know, and there's good musicians and stuff, that I finished up joining them. And then one day we got a phone call from Bowie, and he called Mick and he said, would we go down and do a radio show, the John Peel show? And I wasn't supposed to play bass. I was supposed to, Herbie Flowers was playing bass. I was just going to go down for the ride. So I went down with them, and we got there on a Sunday afternoon, and first time I'd ever met David at Haddon Hall and stuff. And I went in there and he had Woody set his kit up and Mick set his guitar amp up, and then all of a sudden all these mates of David's appeared that were going to sing backing vocals and sing with him on this John Peel show. And then all of a sudden Bowie turned around at me and says, well, are you going to set your bass gear up then? And I said, what? So Herbie Flowers was doing it, you know. And he said, no, Herbie can't do it, can you do it? So I said, all right, yeah. So we spent about 2 hours rehearsing, and in that period of time I had to learn 12 Bowie songs. And some of them were off Hunky Dory, which nobody had ever really played before, you know, so it was quite a nerve-wracking event to actually get that many songs off for a radio show. Plus I'd never played on radio before, so I was really nervous. Plus I'd never met any of these people, you know. And that was my introduction to David. And of course, we went and did the John Peel show the next day. And from then on, I think it was the following week, we did Hunky Dory. Well, with Hunky Dory, I mean, I'd already rehearsed like 4 or 5 songs doing the John Peel show within that 2-hour period. So I knew some of the bass lines and I knew the songs, but we never really rehearsed for Hunky Dory at all. It was you going, he plays the song on the piano or on the acoustic guitar, you get a run through, or maybe 2 if you're lucky, and then you start taking, you know, I mean, there goes that red light and you have to get your bass lines together and stuff, and it's got to go down, you know, I mean, Hunky Dory took about, I think it was 2 weeks to make.
Working with David was different. It was, you know, sometimes a matter of keeping up with where he was going, and I mean, he had a knack of not knowing anything about studios, which he didn't. I don't know if he does now. And he'd see an accordion or a trumpet or some instrument that the band who'd just been recording had left behind, and we'd be saying, this track needs something else, and he'd go, oh, I know what, let's use the accordion. And we would be going, oh, you're joking, that won't work, that doesn't fit. And he would do it and mess about with it, and it would work. And like, nobody could see it. Nobody could see, obviously, what he could see to do with it, which was quite odd, because sometimes you were convinced it was a waste of time.
We went to the pub together, we went to restaurants together, we did everything. You know, when we first started gigging, before even before the concept of Ziggy had come up, we were out doing some pub gigs and stuff, and Bowie had an old Rover, and we'd sling all our gear in the back of the Rover, and we'd all get in a car, and he'd drive off to the gig, and we'd play the gig, and then we'd all drive back to Arden Hall. So it was like a band thing, you know, it was a band, except that he was David Bowie, you know, and we were the band with him, behind him, you know, so it was all done together, it was all, we did everything, everywhere we went was together and stuff. I think he liked that, because he'd been on his own for so long as just a solo artist, doing acoustic stuff, that to have the band around him all the time, he could bounce off us, you know, which was great for him, and it was great for us.
We all lived in one house at that time, so, you know, you'd wake up in the morning, grab your coffee, and David would just be starting pretty things, and you'd think, oh, that sounds interesting, that's got my ear. The next day he'd call me in and say, oh, I've finished that track, and he'd play it. Well, that's good, you know. And sometimes it would go, well, let's go in the studio tomorrow and put that one down. So he'd go in, but he'd already been working on another one. So he'd get all set up ready to do that track, and he'd say, oh no, we're not doing that one. We're going to do Kooks or something. And he'd go, what? We don't know that one. Oh, didn't I play you that? I'll play you it now.
You just did it, you know, you had to. You were on the edge. I mean, especially because I didn't really know him at that time. It was like I'd only known him a couple of weeks, and I was working for this guy, and he wanted things done this way, but he wanted it done quickly, and it was quite nerve-wracking.
And we never went to 3 takes on any stuff we ever did with Bowie. It was usually the first take of a number that we didn't know, right? Or if something messed on that one badly, then 2 takes. Some did go to 3, actually, but very, very rarely, and we never went to 4.
The thing about it is that the first show or the second show was just so boring. And it really was just as boring as it could be, and the songs were great. So after the show, I said to them, I said, you know guys, I said, I think it would be totally cool, you know, it really would be cool if we tried to get a little more theatrical. I mean, you know David, I mean, you worked with Lindsay Camp, you danced with Hermione, you have a good theatrical, and I was making it sound like it was all my fault, so David could stay butch. This was dumb Angie. Dumb Angie wants the show to look nice. They've got to get all dressed up and have lights because Dumb Angie is bored with a bunch of musicians, right? Works, good cop, bad cop. David was, well, I don't know, Angie. There's an idea, though, looking at the boys from Yorkshire, and the boys are looking at me, and I'm going, listen, guys, it'll be cool. It'll really be cool. You don't have to wear anything you don't want to. You don't have to dress up any way you don't want to. You have to choose how you want to look. If you don't make the choice, I'll make it for you.
She was like the fifth member of the band, I would say. She was there for everything. She had so much energy, it was just unbelievable. I mean, this was a woman who organised everything. She organised all the stage clothes, she organised the making of things, she organised Bowie, getting us from A to B. She was like a full-on tour manager in a way, I mean, she really did get involved. She was a lot to do with it.
I said to Ronno, I said, how about, he always looked beautiful. His shirts, his mom just kept him immaculate. His shirts were starched and perfect, and I knew that's how he liked to look. And I said, well, Ronno, how about a suit? Some kind of, well, I don't want to look ridiculous when everyone else is wearing costumes. I said, well, how about a gold lame suit? Oh, I don't know about that, Angie. That's Elvis, innit? I said, come with me to the shop. I've seen one, it's gold, but it's not lame. It was like tiny, tiny, thin corduroy, but gold, I mean, shiny gold. Ronno loved it. Ooh, I look fabulous in this.
Don't you know you're driving your Let me say it again, you gotta make way for the Homo superior.
I mean, when I met him, when I first joined the band, when he came back to Hull, he'd just taken one of his levels in music at the music college, and he just passed that. I think it's level whatever it is, 10 or whatever, and he'd just started writing a bit of music, he's practicing it. And of course, when we did Donkey Dory, Bowie says, well, why don't you write the strings? And it was like, oh God. he spent many a night up late sweating.
Oh, you pretty things. Don't you know you're driving your mom and Papa's insane?
I mean, it was just have a go, if you fancy having a go, have a go at it. I listened to many a Still a Black record, I remember that. Stealing string parts of Still a Black.
You gotta make way for the Homo superior.
It's perfect to me, I mean, I love Donkey Dory as an album. It's my favourite album out of all the albums I played on. I think it's a great album, and it's just got some magic about it. That's you can listen to it anywhere, at any time, and it lifts you up. It's great.
What we thought would work had worked, and we had the mixes back in Trident Studios in London, and it was just like, whoa. It wasn't even that it would sell, or it would, it was more, it worked for us. We thought it was good. And then later on, when you listened again, you thought, it's very different, so it'll either really go or really bomb out. Luckily it went.